Hello, and welcome to the Safety Brief, your source for the latest trends and insights in cybersecurity. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and today we'll be discussing a critical decision many organizations face, choosing between fully managed security solutions and self-managed tools. Joining us today is Matt, Royce, and Mike. We appreciate you sharing your insights today.
Glad to be here.
All right, let's dive right in. Can you go ahead and explain the differences between tools that are fully managed and self-managed?
Sure. I'll start. You can think of self-managed security as sort of the do-it-yourself approach, sort of handling everything in-house. The company has its own team that's in charge of everything security related. You decide on your own security policies, handle compliance, you manage all of the risk. It's about making all the big and small decisions on how to protect your data and its systems. So that means your team needs to be on its toes with setting up firewalls, managing intrusion detection systems, maybe even using complex tools like SIEMs to analyze security alerts. It's all about being hands-on with installing updates, monitoring the network, and responding to incidents. You can look at managed tools now. That's sort of like just hiring a contractor to redo your kitchen. So you bring in a third party. So often we'll call it a managed security service provider or MSSP, and they take care of all the security needs. So you're essentially outsourcing your cybersecurity operations, and it can really take a load off your internal teams, letting them focus on whatever it is that your business does best. And these guys do everything from managing firewalls, keeping an eye on your network 24/7, and responding to breaches. They have the latest tech, they've got trained experts, and they're always ready. You have anything, Mike?
No, I explained it pretty well. The do-it-yourself approach versus having professionals come in to execute the job themselves. I think one critical distinction you want to make between the two is qualifications. Who's specifically trained with a platform, with a tool, with a service, versus those that maybe they either have some experience, some casual experience, self-training, or maybe they've previously been trained and they were qualified, but now they're working in an organization where they're not in that specific role for the qualification. For example, an MSP primarily for providing IT services. You may have been a security analyst in another organization. You may be personally equipped to manage a security tool, do it yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean the organization itself is equipped to support you in that role. So that's where fully managed should be a benefit by bringing in people that are not only trained, they're also equipped to do the job. Meaning they're resourced right, they have the right amount of team members, equipment, or any other requirements to fully leverage the solution.
That's definitely a great point. And with that, not only having the resources initially, but when you have a managed service, you can scale your business a lot more smoothly. When your needs grow, you can quickly adjust the services with them, whereas scaling in your own security efforts, that's a lot more budgeting and planning.
Absolutely. Fully managed security solutions are those where all aspects of security, including monitoring, detection, and response, are handled by the third-party provider. On the other hand, self-managed tools require the organization to handle all of these tasks internally, which can be overwhelming. As someone who was part of the SOC, and I know the level of eyes on glass that takes place, can you explain the role and significance of a security operations center, or SOC?
Well, the SOC is both the beating heart and the brain of a security provider operation. It's where the security analysts reside. It's where they operate from. It's where all the telemetry and logs and other information for security monitoring coalesce into a single pane of glass or a series of panes of glasses for the analysts and their security automation to action any kind of threat detection, threat activity. SOC is absolutely critical. SOC is indispensable when you're talking cybersecurity.
Definitely. You could sort of look at it as like the high-tech command center, and where all the action happens when it comes to protecting an organization from cyber threats. And the role in that, it's about surveillance and rapid response, because these guys are the ones that are monitoring the network, like you said, 24/7, eyes on glass, looking for any unusual activity or IOCs. And they use a bunch of advanced tools that help them gather and analyze the data across the company's network in real time, which lets them spot potential threats a lot more quickly and accurately. And it's not just about watching, it's about being able to react to it as well. If they spot something, they jump on it and they mitigate that threat. This can mean something from isolating a compromised segment of the network to shutting down malicious processes before they spread. It's that. And then it's also the proactive part, right? I mean, because these teams aren't just putting out fires, they're all working to strengthen the organization's defenses from the beginning. We run simulations and drills, things like cyber fire drills, essentially to prepare for these risks. And they keep the company's security practice up to snuff with the latest standards and ensure compliance with any legal or regulatory requirements. So in a nutshell, yes, it's crucial.
Another characteristic of the SOC is that it's where its priorities lie. Its priority is securing the organization or the organizations under its purview. It has no other priority that will supplant that. So there's no other considerations that are being taken when a security analyst or threat analyst identifies something and has to maybe disable a user's account, isolate a workstation or isolate a server. It might be disruptive to the operations of the organization. You're turning off our cash register. You're disabling one of our managers from accessing their email. That's not so relevant to the SOC because their concern is to protect the organization. And that's why it's good to have a SOC there to execute these functions, because if you were to have someone within the organization and it's not a member of the SOC have to make those decisions, they have to consider multiple. They can't just prioritize security. Like, wow, so I don't want these managers to be upset if I lock their account. Oh, well, no, we can't turn off the register. It's lunch hour at the restaurant. This would be the worst time to do it. The SOC is not going to take those items into consideration. I mean, to an extent, they're not going to be disruptive. But when you're looking at it just kind of from a high level general overview, security is paramount. And that's what their focus is, to make sure that the organization will be secure and persist to the next day.
I think that one of the things that many people don't understand when they look at the difference between a fully managed or a self-managed solution. Fully managed solutions are going to be a little bit more cost intensive, obviously. But you have to also look at what you're getting with that. With self-managed, you're going to be reliant on what you have in your environment. Do you have your own SOC? If you're an MSP, probably not. Do you have somebody that does threat analysis and threat intelligence on your staff? Again, if you're an MSP, probably not. That's way out of the budget for most MSPs to actually have as a starting point. Most have a minimal shop. Everybody is a jack of all trades. There is no specialization. And you're basically fighting fires. When you go with a fully managed solution, you have the capability of getting a team that has all of those specializations. So you're not asking the person who normally is great with printers to try and understand what, the threat vector was of ransomware that came in. That's not overly beneficial in your environment to try and ask people to have that kind of multi-specialty. It takes a lot of time to get one specialty. So unless they've been with you for 15 years, they probably don't have that. So you're getting that experience with a fully managed solution. You're getting years and years of experience. But even better, you're getting something that is even more crucial to your environment that you probably don't have in place either. Process and procedure. Those, I can't tell you how important they are to have within your environment. And that's what you get with a fully managed solution. You have people that can tell you, this is what we recommend. This is what you need to have in place. This is an optimal security stack. Here's how you go about with it. When you're on your own, you're kind of just floating along, hoping that everything goes well and that everything you've put in place is going to be good enough to keep you safe.
I know, I agree. You almost get like a consultant to help you with all those issues as well, which is great. So another topic that we've spoken about in previous episodes is our white glove onboarding process that truly makes it handled, not homework. So how does the onboarding process differ between fully managed security solutions and self-managed tools? And can it impact the way that the tools behave?
Dibs.
Go right ahead. Take it off.
Okay. We're going to use our security solution as an example here. All right. It's basically it is the best security solution that we have on the market. I'm looking at the endpoint. Rango's going to look at the perimeter side of things. But endpoint wise, we have the best solution that's on the market. Here's the complication. If you don't have somebody that is fully managing the solution, it's not going to be 100% effective. The reason for that is a lot of programs people get, and I hate to say this, but this comes from the executive level, the C level, your CISO, your CTO, whatever. They say, oh, this is a fantastic program. Get it, put it in place. Okay, then what? It's not an easy bake oven. You're not making soggy muffins out of this thing. There's commitment that has to be devoted to actually learning what the program's capable of, learning the features that need to be turned on, need to be turned off, going through a set process to ensure that when you turn certain features on, you're not going to brick your entire department that you just turned on. What if they're using something that's AutoCAD happens to go through and do process injection or process hollowing as part of its base functionality? Certain programs are going to freak out and they're going to terminate that. If you don't know how to go through and permit it through that program, you're going to end up causing a ton of downtime, especially if, say, you're an engineering firm and everybody's using AutoCAD. You're going to have a whole bunch of people screaming. Then you're going to have a whole bunch of people screaming above you saying, well, why is this happening? Why didn't we know about this? Why didn't we do this, the right way the first time? Well, because you have to take time to actually go through and manage that. And that's not something that most security teams budget time for. They want to install it, they want it to run, they want it to be good. That's all they want.
Yeah, there's two main characteristics, in my opinion, for onboardings: making them effective and making them efficient. And you've done really well to explain making it an effective deployment. You want to make sure it's tuned, it's there properly, it's not adversely affecting existing systems and processes. It's perfect. But you also have to take account of time, like you just mentioned right now. And there are a lot of organizations, especially if they don't have mastery over the deployment of a platform, they're not going to scope the correct amount of time. They're likely going to have overage and they're going to run out of resources. So the effectiveness is one thing, and then that efficiency and making sure it's deployed stays on schedule, it's done without extra moves, without any kind of loss of time. Here's a great analogy. I know I personally experienced it. I know a lot of other folks probably share this too. But when you're first learning how to cook on your own, and you're trying to cook a relatively simple meal, and you're starting to use a lot of pots and pans, and you're using every burner on the stove, you're using every measuring cup and measuring spoon, and you make quite a mess because you haven't really developed that finesse for cooking. Once you're there, you realize you can cook everything in a single frying pan and maybe one spatula, and you're just that good now. You're not making a mess anymore because you've developed those skills. The same principle applies to the deployment of security solutions. Once you've learned all the mistakes, you learn all the nuances about them, getting them deployed is quick and easy for anyone that has that mastery.
Yeah, I think the tuning aspect is really important too, because a lot of the times we see people wanting to over tune to where, you know, they're not getting those notifications or that the noise or the prevention in place that's needed. So I think having that expertise again with the SOC and, you know, the full team and consultant all built in one really helps make sure that the tuning is done correctly. So now that our listeners kind of have a better understanding of both options, what are the advantages of using a fully managed security solution over the self-managed tools, other than the onboarding and the SOC that we kind of just dissected a little bit?
Well, one of the advantages really is you have the correct aces in their places. You have the right people doing the right job, and you get to focus on what you want. As a business owner, there may be some aspects of the business that you really want to focus on because that's what you enjoy. Maybe it's managing people. Maybe it's sales. It's growing your revenue, growing your client base. Maybe it's training people. Maybe you like hiring folks that are green out of the industry and you take pride in cultivating them, bringing them up as technicians or engineers. When you're bringing in professionals to do other components of your what your organization does, it means one less thing that you have to handle on your own, and more time afforded to you to do what you enjoy as part of your business. So you get to be out there speaking in front of people if that's what you want to do, and talk about how great your business is, or any of those other things I already listed. That's one of the benefits. Also, the competency. You're bringing in a fully managed service, you know it's going to be done right. You don't have to be concerned that there's going to be mistakes made outside of normal margin, human error, of course. But generally, you're not going to have to worry about any kind of problems, any kind of deficiencies, and everything's just going to work. Get to sleep at night.
Yeah, something we highlight a lot is the peace of mind that we bring our partners. So I love that you brought that in there. Any comments from you, Matt or Royce?
Sure. I mean, back to the cost. We mentioned that, and while sure it can sound more expensive up front, but it's actually sort of like getting an all-you-can-eat buffet, because you're paying one price, but you're getting all of the security expertise, all of the tech you need in one place. It can actually be more cost effective in the long run because you're not trying to play catch up with technology, hiring more people, training them, facing unexpected risks. This all is going to end up costing a lot. It's not a task of brevity. Plus, these services are always on. Cybersecurity isn't just 9 to 5. Threats can happen day or night, and managed services like ourselves, we are always managing. We're always vigilant, 24/7, and that can be comforting because it means that your business is protected around the clock. Again, back to the scalability as well. When your business starts to grow, these services can scale with you. You don't need to hire more staff. You don't need to buy more software. It's all part of it, and which makes scaling up smoother. And once again, lets you focus on what matters to your business. So potentially like giving a headache to us.
What Royce mentioned about security not just being a 9 to 5, that's a big thing. I mean, how many MSPs do you know? How many enterprises do you know that truly have a 24/7 support model? A lot of them will say they have a 24/7 support model, but they really don't. A lot of times what happens is it goes to an answering service, and that answering service will get basic information, and then they'll page someone. I know that's how it was at one of the places that I was about 10 years ago. Everybody had an on-call rotation. Now, I mean, it sounds great. You don't have everybody that's sitting there if there's nothing happening, so it's cost savings, right? But what happens when the primary person doesn't answer their phone? and you have a major incident that's going on. What happens when the backup doesn't answer their phone when the primary already hasn't answered theirs? You now have a critical incident that's going on and nobody that's engaging on it. So having a fully managed SOC, having a SOC that is going to be there 24/7 to be able to engage on those issues, that's going to be your cost savings right there. Because what happens when, I don't know, you start seeing lateral movement showing up within your environment at 3:30 in the morning? If nobody can actually be reached or nobody's there monitoring that, by the time somebody is, what else do they have access to? Are you going to come into the office the next morning, 5 hours later, and see lovely black screens on your desktop saying, please pay us if you want your data back? Could it have been solved just by having a fully managed SOC that was there, able to engage, able to shut that down? These are the things that you get with fully managed that you're not going to have with a self-managed solution.
I know that's a great point, Matt. Another thing we often hear about is alerts, and that goes into that over-tuning aspect that happens quite a bit. Alert fatigue occurs when security teams are overwhelmed by the sheer volume of security alerts, leading to important alerts being overlooked or ignored altogether. We have touched on this before in the safety brief. Muting the notification does not make the concern go away, just like my doorbell notifications that I had muted when my package was stolen. So how exactly does alert fatigue impact cybersecurity, and what strategies can be employed to address it? I know BLOKWORX has quite a few strategies to ensure that we don't contribute to alert fatigue. So feel free to provide some of that as well.
Okay. To define what alert fatigue is probably important first too. Alert fatigue is when you have a security platform tool, some sort, it's generating alerts saying something happened. Here's an event, right? And it keeps telling you that events happen, and it decides to tell you 100 times an hour or 1,000 times an hour, and it's doing this every day. After a while, the people that are receiving these alerts stop caring because now they're fatigued because there's too many alerts, they can't action them. And now we can go into depth with how that's detrimental to an organization.
Yeah, it's sort of like hearing a fire alarm telling you to change the battery, but you've just been ignoring it, and eventually you just drown it out. Or a car alarm that doesn't stop. After a while, you get audio fatigue and you don't hear anything anymore. And this leads to slower response times or even missing the actual important warnings about real threats. Well, I guess let's talk about how we tackle the problem. Would be the most effective, or one of the most effective strategies, to prioritize alerts.
Correct.
Funny that there is a book reading in Extreme Ownership. It's actually How U.S. Navy SEALs Lead and Win by Jocko Willink. He talks about one of the first military principles is about prioritization, and discusses the concept of prioritize and execute. And the principle emphasizes the importance of, when you're identifying the highest priority task, and focusing all your efforts on it and executing it decisively, which I believe perfectly correlates into the realm of cybersecurity, because not all alerts are going to be created equal. So using tools like advanced analytics, you can set up systems that will score and prioritize these threats. And that means that your team can now focus on the more critical issues first, reducing the noise and distraction of the less serious or false alarms. Another key strategy which we implement is automation. There's a lot of repetitive grunt work involved in handling alerts, like sorting, analyzing, correlation, resolving the more straightforward cases. And that's where automation tools can help take over these tasks, leaving the human experts free to deal with the more complex problems. So again, we get back to speeding up response times and making your team's workload a lot more manageable. Another solution is enhancing the accuracy of your monitoring tools. And this is where, again, having a managed service who is professional and are experts into tuning these tools, and not just having the best and latest technology, but knowing how to use it efficiently. It involves fine tuning those systems to better distinguish between those real alerts and the non-issues. Because the better your system is at detecting actual threats, the fewer false alarms you'll have, which is going to directly assist in alert fatigue.
That is correct.
Part of being able to leverage tuning is also to establish trust with your partner. BLOKWORX has demonstrated superior acumen in the tuning and alerting and notification of actual threat events when they need to be notified. So our partners, when they get that midnight call from us, they know something happened.
Mm-hmm.
They know there's something going on, and that we're on top of it and we're taking care of it for them. That we're not calling them for arbitrary reasons. We're not sending them notifications that are unnecessary. There's no noise. When they see something from the BLOKWORX SOC, they stop and they read it because they know it's been analyzed, it's been reviewed, and warrants their attention.
Right.
That is correct.
Yeah, that's part of the benefits of managed services. You also gain that trust with an organization you've been working with.
And that's a great point to touch on, because I would say lastly, fostering a culture of continuous training and awareness would also make a very big difference. So keeping your security team educated on the latest threats, keeping them educated on what the best practices are, means they're more likely going to correctly assess and respond to those alerts when they come in.
And that just comes down to learning the environment, learning everything that's going on. There's going to be nuances that obviously you may not know about right away, but when you work with a partner, they get to know about your environment. I mean, if you worked with a company that was relatively large and you had a user that went from Florida to New York, would you think anything about that? They logged in, generated an event. You'd think, oh, they're just, maybe they're on vacation, or maybe they're, on an assignment up there doing that. When you work with somebody long enough, you're going to know this user generally doesn't travel. So an alert being triggered outside of their normal location is something that needs to be addressed. It's an anomaly. And that's what you're looking for. You don't want to focus on the benign. Yes, the benign can lead you to something that might be an anomaly, but you want to be able to actually focus and say, that's not what it should be. We can address that and be able to proactively reach out to the customer and say, hey, we did this because of this. Let us know if there needs to be, anything changed around this, or if this is okay. But when you have a partner and you have a fully managed solution, you start to have that proactive communication. You start to have people that are going to act in your best interest when you're not there to act in your own best interest.
Yeah, I think it's also important that the fact that we provide a lot of information when we do ping our partners, if it is an anomaly alert, we send them the user, the tenant, the location of where they normally are, the location that they're logging in at, along with the IPs and things of that nature. So they have all the information that's needed. They're not having to go back behind us and go look at the tool themselves. We're actually taking that step out of the way for our partners, which I think is really important.
Mm-hmm.
So alert fatigue is one of many. What are some other common challenges organizations face when managing their own security tools?
How to use it. Investment in training with it. Maybe they just don't have the time to fully learn it in and out. Maybe it's outside of their team's wheelhouse. I think I'm stealing everyone's points here. You're really good with endpoints. You're a workstation person. You can build desktops left to right. You can troubleshoot them left to right. But maybe you don't really understand security concepts. Can you learn an endpoint security platform? More or less. It's not too much of a drift from what you know. but you're not going to excel at it. You're not going to have an expertise in it. You can't be an expert in everything. There may be people who just have no desire for security. They want to be purely IT. They want to be purely operational. They want to be help desk. They like making people happy. Not too many security professionals are in the business of making people happy. They're in the business of making them secure. What other kind of challenges can you guys think of?
I mean, I think we touched on most of them. The continuous training of the staff, the cost of that. I mean, we're talking about a landscape that's constantly evolving. This isn't stagnant information. Once you learn it, you have it. We're talking about a continuous long-term investment in culture, finances. It's a lot. So
What about
go ahead.
potential business impacts? I mean, let's think about that. I've seen this personally. 4 different security solutions running on the same machine. Do you really need all 4 of those security solutions? All of them being endpoint solutions? Let's be honest here. Are you properly managing all 4 of those solutions? There's no way. No way at all that you're going to be actively monitoring and managing all 4 of those solutions efficiently or effectively.
Are there redundancies in the solution? Are you paying for something that you don't even pay for? Now we're talking business here, dollar signs.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing right there. I mean, that's lost money. You have 2 options. Either you were unfortunately told to buy this, and now you have it in your environment, and you have to use it, or the other option is you let it sit on a shelf and become shelfware. It's never a good situation. But then let's say you were convinced to buy this as part of a bundle package. You wanted program X. The only way you could get that is if you bought programs A through G along with it. There are vendors that do that. About 10 years ago, I was at one of those vendors. In order to get certain solutions, they'll lock you into a 3-year agreement. And you get all these programs that you don't want, but now you have executives that are looking at it saying, well, we paid for it. Why aren't we using it? Okay, now you're throwing another security solution in the mix. Anybody know what having multiple security solutions can actually cause on your endpoint? Race conditions.
Conflicts.
Yeah, race conditions. Program A takes an action, causing program B to take an action, causing program A to take an action, causing program B to take an action. Goes back and forth until your machine basically just self-destructs. Either it becomes unusable, or you get a lovely blue screen of death, known as a bug check. And when you break those apart, you'll generally find the filter drivers for both of these security solutions are very prominently displayed right at the top of the stack right before the crash happened, because they were going back and forth. So now you have money that you're wasting because you have multiple solutions that are on your machine. Money you're wasting because your user can't use their machine because you've made it inoperable. And money that you're also spending because now you have a full-time engineer who's trying to fix the original mistake just to unwind the entire situation back to where everything works. That's not a profitable solution. And that's why when you have a team there to advise you and say, look, if you want to use this solution and this solution, this is what you have to do. We don't advise using it, but if you are being told you have to, let's try and make them interact with each other as little as humanly possible so that we don't impact your environment. A lot of times that's what we do for our day-to-day is we're advisors. We are there to try and provide you the sage advice to make sure that your environment stays safe, secure, and operable. The last one, very beneficial and kind of important. If you're not operable, you're not making money. If you're not making money, you're not growing. If you're not making money, you're also probably going out of business. Just throwing that out there.
Well, lastly, to wrap up this discussion, how can organizations ensure they're making the right choice between fully managed security and self-managed tools? Because, I mean, there are some people out there that it may make more sense to have the self-managed option.
Sure. Um, I mean, first off, if we think about companies that deal with extremely sensitive data, you know, government bodies, defense contractors, these guys often have strict regulations about how and where their data is managed. Sometimes the rules are so specific that it just doesn't allow a handoff of the security to an outside service. They have to keep everything under their roof to ensure protocols are followed to the letter. Now,
Mm-hmm.
then there's the customization aspect. Some businesses have really unique needs that off the shelf security services they just can't cover. Maybe they're using some specialized software, or their business model is a bit unconventional, and self management just allows them to tailor every aspect of their security to fit those unique needs perfectly without compromise. Control is a huge factor too. Some companies just need to have their hands on all of the controls on their security systems. This could be because they want immediate responses to security threats without the need to go through a third party, or because they believe that they actually have the expertise in house and feel more confident in managing it themselves. Um, Speaking of expertise, if a company already has a strong team of IT security pros, they might prefer to use the internal talent rather than outsource. That could be a big plus if the team's already up to speed and deeply integrated with the company's systems and culture. Then it can make sense to leverage that internal knowledge and expertise.
So interesting that you say that. There's a word you used that really kind of makes everybody think about whether they want to use a fully managed solution or a self-managed solution. Outsource. That word terrifies a lot of organizations because your data, you don't know where it's going, you don't know who's going to access it, etc., unless you go through and fully vet everything. So what's another way that you could word that makes it a little bit more palatable and easier to get the support that you need with the solutions that you have in place? Call it an augmentation. Staff augmentation is a lot more palatable than saying, let's get outsourced help. Because an augmentation means that you're having a partner. You're not just hiring somebody who's going to be basically the equivalence of a gopher that is going to handle certain things. You're not outsourcing to TaskRabbit to, get things done. You're actually building a partnership. Now, along with that, look for a partner that has a track record that is extremely positive. But don't just look at what they say. Talk to people they've worked with. Talk to their current customers. Talk to people that are no longer with them. People that are with them are going to always give a glowing recommendation. But if you talk to somebody who isn't working with them and they still give a glowing recommendation and say, they did everything possible, it just came down to where it wasn't financially, viable for us to continue on with the solution. There you go. You have somebody that's not with them anymore, but still giving a glowing recommendation.
You bring up a real good point about vetting, and vetting is one aspect of what an organization can do to help decide that whole fully manage or self-manage. So you've decided, okay, we're going to explore fully managed solutions. You're going to have a list of questions you ask. You're going to have some expectations, expected answers you want from them. I want to go over there. These are the things I'm going to ask, and these are what I want to hear. Now, if you can't ask your own organization those same questions and answer them the way you want, then you're likely disqualifying yourself from a self-managed solution in that regard. So if you're like, I want my SOC to be 24/7, I want them to be able to send me alerts on the hour, every hour. These are my expectations. But if you're not equipped to fulfill those same expectations, then you're also not equipped to do adoption of any kind of self-managed service.
That's correct.
That you're looking for.
Now, the other major thing I would say is when anybody is looking for a vendor to work with, every vendor has a stack that they like to implement. Ask questions about the stack. You're not vetting just the company that you're wanting to work with. You're vetting their stack at the same time. If you ask a question and say, "Hey, how does this differ from what I currently have?" And if their response is, "Oh, just trust us." Right. Y'all seen Fallout? That dude's selling you snake oil and he's going to turn you into a ghoul. All right? Don't trust that. Look for vendors that are going to be forthcoming. They're going to be transparent with you. That's something that you're going to want. Because if they can't be transparent with you about something simple like, how does this differ from what I have in my environment? When you have a critical issue, they sure are not going to be transparent with you about that. Yeah. They're going to go into CYA mode, and they're going to try and find any reason they possibly can that it wasn't them. Then they're going to have the conversation with you. When you have a vendor that you're working with and you're vetting them, you want to make sure that if it hits the fan, the first thing they're going to do is say, "Hey, this is happening. We are on it. We are fixing it." Once it's done, then focus on where the shortcomings were. But if a vendor starts focusing on the shortcomings before they even resolve the issue and the issue is still ongoing, that's not a vendor that you want to work with. That's not a fully managed solution. That's a for-profit solution. And all they're looking at are the dollar signs. They're not looking at keeping you safe. You want to work with vendors that have the mindset that they want to protect the world that we currently live in. You know, everybody has a lifestyle that they're accustomed to. We call it our way of life. Protecting your way of life is a big thing. So if you're looking for a solution that's going to help protect your way of life and keep everything the way you are, and by that I mean your income, your company's income, your employees' income, make sure you go through and you do a lot of vetting on the solution and the team that you want to work with.
Yeah, you're giving them a job at the end of the day. And you don't give anyone a job without conducting an interview and sometimes even doing background checks and so on and so forth. So definitely don't be afraid to question your providers. And like Matt said, if the culture doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. Or the solutions. It's important that the solutions meet the requirements, whether it be for insurance or personal, but make sure to ask those questions. It could be awkward, but it's important. So to conclude, it's essential for organizations to carefully consider their specific security needs, resources, and expertise when making this decision. While self-managed tools offer more control and customization, like Roy said, fully managed solutions provide the expertise and support needed to effectively combat today's cyber threats. If you do want to learn more about the BLOKWORX fully managed prevention services, head over to BLOKWORX.com for more information and reach out to one of our security professionals. Well, that's all the time we have for today. A big thank you to our guests for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to join us on our next time for more tips and trends in cybersecurity. Until then, stay frosty.